Hey! Oh,
You forgot the music. I was gonna. We're doing special music today.
woo!
Just let it ring out.
I lost you. Welcome to Business Pants. That's our March Sadness music,
Yes, well, we're
courtesy
going
of
to talk about
CBS
a little bit
Sports.
today. Yes, thank you, CBS, for allowing us to rip you off directly.
Yeah, because we did ask,
using
right?
it. They're not using it now,
No, they're really not.
so whatever.
So it's a special Friday edition of the Business Pants. I'm low energy today. I'm Damian Ross. That's Matt Mascardi. We are Free Float Media. We're gonna keep trying this now. We don't. Now that we're stuck at home and we're not able to get any other job anyway, we might as well keep plugging away at this, right?
Really, that's where we're at already.
It's a difficult world.
Okay,
Yeah.
speaking of not having any other jobs, so announcement number one.
Oh wait, yeah.
We do have some very loyal listeners, and by loyal I mean I think they listen to us.
Not just us.
Occasionally.
I bought 75 iPhones so I could download.
I'm wearing a bandana as a face mask, so we're in guerrilla warfare mode right now. But the listeners who are listening, I did get a hit on LinkedIn from with some super nice comments and good comments and some interesting critiques of some of the things that we do.
Oh yeah. Can we address that later? I want to.
Yeah, one of the things that they mentioned was a Patreon account. Now, if you don't know what Patreon is, it's basically a way to take donations and keep going. These are like you get to sponsor the show. And so I'm setting that up. We have an account set up. There'll probably be 2 tiers of membership: a $5 a month and a $7.50 a month membership. Where $5 a month, you'll get access to stuff like raw, unedited interviews. And when Damien and I do the show, I often edit down the show to to be 20 or 30 minutes instead of 45 or 50. We'll give you the whole thing, so you get to hear the stupid stuff we say.
Hold on. Now, what if somebody would just had a generous pile of cash they were sitting on at home?
Oh, there's no limit.
Could they donate more? Okay, thank you.
Please donate as much as you possibly can.
Because you know what? Maybe it only takes one generous person out there to make our day, right? I mean, let's be honest.
So we're gonna open
one patron,
but this was a suggestion from a listener to do that, and I set it up a while ago, but we didn't think we were gonna do that, and now we're gonna do that. I think
Matt,
that's
what
right.
a brilliant time to start asking for money.
I
mean, really, you couldn't have picked a better time.
Everyone's flush with cash.
Western world.
There's no problems in the world that are competing. So I just wanted to make that quick announcement. I just wanted to say that up front.
All right.
Why don't you walk us in, though? We haven't even introduced ourselves today. I don't even
know.
No,
I did.
Oh, you did?
You missed that because you were rehearsing your lines.
I'm thinking
about begging for money. It's March 20th, 2020. This is day 7? Shit, I always screw this up. 8?
9
of the COVID.
I don't know.
All right. Day 8 of the COVID-19 global pandemic self-isolation crisis. Here's what I really want to know, which I'm not going to get an answer to because all my neighbors hate me, but how many people are actually doing what we're doing and self-isolating? I can't figure it out because my neighborhood is an eerie ghost town. I'm not on Facebook. So yeah, you think? We got a letter from my daughter's school principal today kind of reasserting the need to self-isolate. And I wonder why he's doing this. Are there people cheating? And then, of course, my daughter tells me that one of her best friends is cheating. So I don't know. I just don't know what's going on.
Well, I did tell you the other night when I went out, it was like I had to go out to the grocery store. It was a necessary go out. And I'm driving 30 miles an hour. And I've got I must have seen a dozen 17-year-olds with backwards baseball hats, basically being like, whatever, Gen X, welcome to your death, and flying by me at 70 miles an hour. So I do think there is a generation that these letters are intended for that is not necessarily us who are terrified of our shadow right now.
So we were right. Reality bites, right? We were
Gen X
accurate.
was always right. We were, and I read this
By the way,
article by Will
yeah.
Leach, who was
hmm
like basically like Gen X has been practicing for this our entire lives. We've been listening to
Moby.
Blind Melon albums
Yeah.
and watching Reality Bites and MTV. We practiced for this.
I would have a snarky retort to that, but actually, I completely agree. It's 100% accurate.
We're finally good at
One
something.
one thing we forgot to mention is that you are for any of you bold or brave, you are inviting anyone and everyone to call in and join the show today. So, do you want to tell people about that? And I say they can do it at any time.
Yeah, anytime, please join.
How do
We're
they do
we're
that, Matt?
definitely going to go for an hour, but if people are joining, we'll go for longer. On Twitter, on LinkedIn, even on my Facebook, my personal Facebook account, I have put up a link to a Google Meet. If you click the link and you say join meeting, it should prompt me whether or not it'll say somebody wants to join the meeting. We'll just let you in. Or you can talk with us. You can ask us questions about the market, about ESG, about
My beard,
Damien's hygiene, whatever,
virile. Listen, and this is
whatever
for
you
anybody.
feel.
This is, I don't care who you are. I mean, maybe you're just lonely. Maybe you're just going a little mental, like I am. I mean, I live with three other people, but I'm still feeling lonely and mental. So, yeah, if you just want to hang on the line with us, talk, whatever, just
Yeah,
do it.
if you want to
Give it a
hang on the
shot.
line and be on mute, you can do that. You can see what it looks like. So try
Okay.
try
All
try
right.
it.
Now it's getting weird. All right. Okay. So we'll talk about Patreon again. I think you should remind people multiple times. Today we're going to unveil the round one of our March Sadness tournament, right? Which
hmm
means what?
So
All round one, all
all the games in
16
round
games.
one, all 16 games were played.
Exciting.
It's March 20th. It was round one today. I
All right.
scored it. And there are some upsets to go over.
All
There's
right.
some stuff to go over here. So we want to talk about that.
So, Matt will go over that. Well, actually, we'll start with that because that's sort of the most exciting thing of the day. And then we're just gonna kind of basically what we're gonna do is just chat about the world and chat about the headlines. But before we talk about the headlines, uh, there's something more and more we're talking about around here, which is just this idea of whether or not these kind of annoying principles that we always talk about, ESG, corporate governance, all that, is this the moment where they're going to start to go mainstream? So we can talk about more of that later. I mean,
Yeah.
I I'm going to say probably not, but
All right. It was good to have
I would
that
like,
talk.
yeah. So I can cross that off the list. All right, let's get to some excitement. I'm waiting for.
All right. You
I'm in
ready
my
for this?
backyard studio and I'm watching the door like a hawk, waiting for my coffee to be delivered to me. But until then, rouse me up with some March Sadness music and let's get at it. Is there a document I can be looking at while we do this?
Yeah, you can go on our Google Drive and you can open up the doc. But
All right,
here, let's start with the music.
do it.
March, March, March. Sadness, sadness, sadness. 2020.
Now I'm getting excited.
I unfortunately do not have a sound effects machine that gives me an echo. So
You don't
I
have to
gotta
tell
do
people.
it
That sounded actually somewhat legitimate. Make it till you fake it.
in no way did that sound legitimate. So let's talk March Sadness. All right, so I'm going to pull this up right now. I'm going to shrink our little heads and I'm going to show
My
you.
breath.
There's the round one, 2020 March Sadness is.
Oh wait, why does my bracket have? Wait, hold on. Why does my bracket have red ink in it?
Your bracket has red ink in it because I went through your bracket and
Oh, shoot. I
highlighted the
feel like
winners with red ink.
Oh, so now I know the winners. How do I do this without? How do I play along?
So I'm just going to tell you. You're just not going to look at it yet, and then I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
And then
All
it'll
right.
be fine. So right now,
Right.
if you're
I'm gonna
watching the live stream, you can see the bracket is up.
Oh, good.
So I'll go over the winners quickly. I'll go over the one seeds, okay? Because we're already going to have something to talk about right off the bat. Number one, Boeing is playing number 8, Activision Blizzard. Boeing killed them 3-0. It was Boeing took them out.
Oh, good.
As a reminder, the way points are scored here, the biggest stock drop gets a point percentage-wise. since the last game. For this game, it was a 1 day stock drop. Then you've got more Google searches for the company and the word controversy. That's a point. And then you got Google search trends, more Google searches for company and the word sucks. So in this case, what you're seeing, because Boeing won 3-0, 3 points to none,
Mhm.
it means more people in the last 7 days were searching for the words Boeing sucks, Boeing controversy, and they had their stock drop more than Activision
Yeah.
Blizzard. So that was easy. They went chalk. They
All right.
killed them.
So okay, let me interrupt for a second. There's some Boeing news today. Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, she was the ex-governor of South Carolina. She resigned from the Boeing
In
board,
disgrace. In
and
disgrace.
the reason she gave, which I don't buy personally, I think it's a political posturing. The reason she gave is that she's opposing government aid to Boeing. But the real reason that my insiders tell me is that the Boeing board is a shit show, and why the hell would anybody want to be involved with the Boeing board right now? So anyway,
That's
so
excellent
Boeing in the
question.
news. Boeing, our number one seed, takes the win. I like it.
So Boeing number one seed takes the win. I actually having another board member drop right now is great because I wonder how quickly they speed dial Ken Duberstein to figure out who their next board member should be. Like, do they have to do that instantaneously? Like, how does that work? Um,
Oh yeah.
so the other
You
that was
think
in
he
the.
has a rotary phone in his self isolation?
I think he's in his panic room right now. Yeah. That the Boeing Activision game was in the
Are we off?
Apology
Wait,
Tour
hold on,
division.
Matt.
Yeah.
Are we off sync today? Is this a Google Meet? Is it? I feel like this is the audio is not synced up right.
Yeah, something happened to you for a second there, but it's you. It's not me. It's always you. Well,
So is there anything?
I blame you.
Should I rejoin the meeting?
Would you like to?
Should I rejoin the meeting?
Yeah, give it a shot. Give it a
Yeah,
shot.
you talk about the first round. I'm going to rejoin the call.
All
Yeah,
right. All
keep
right.
keep going.
All right. Come back to me. All right. So that was the Apology Tour division, Boeing, Activision. A great first round matchup in no way at all. Boeing went total chalk. In the CEO's Rule division, it looks like Damien's back. But can he hear us is the question.
Here you. I just don't know if we're talking over each other or not.
No, we're I just got to the CEO's Rule division.
Hmm.
1-8 is Amazon versus Microsoft. Jeff Bezos versus Satya Nadella. Closer than you'd think. Amazon won 2-1.
Okay.
But the reason why Amazon didn't get the full sweep because they crushed, and when I say crushed, I mean demolished Microsoft for Amazon sucks and Amazon controversy. Just way,
Yeah, of
but
course.
Amazon's actual price change as of close yesterday was they actually outperformed Microsoft, so they lost
Yeah,
on the
that does
price
not
change.
surprise me.
So they eked out a win on the back of sucking so much. In the fake public division, Facebook versus Pinterest are 1-8. Facebook. Facebook is clearly going to be the team to beat here. The
Yeah.
searches for the word Facebook sucks might outpace everything else. And then our big upset, stakeholders rule
Oh.
division,
Oh.
BlackRock versus General Motors, GM.
Yeah.
General Motors won 3-0.
Wait, what do you mean big upset? Well, I picked General Motors.
But they were the 8th seed. That's why it's an
Yeah, I
upset.
know.
That's a
Because
big
I'm.
upset.
You laughed at me for that.
I did.
Yeah.
I thought BlackRock definitely had an edge there. Other important games, and we can come back to these. Other important games are interesting games, I think. And this will be posted on our website. So we don't have to go through every single one.
Well, you're not going through every game?
We can, but I was going to just do the highlights here.
No. I think we got plenty of time.
Equifax, back in the Apology Tour division, we'll finish out the
Yeah.
division. Equifax, the 4 seed, versus Johnson & Johnson, the 5 seed. Equifax took that one 2-0.
Oh, damn it.
Setting up Boeing versus Equifax in
All right.
the Sweet
I missed
16
there. I missed there.
on March 25th.
What about the big Starbucks and PG&E matchup?
Starbucks PG&E was close. PG&E scored 1 point at the 3 seed. Starbucks was a 6 seed and it got the 2, but Starbucks took it. We both picked that upset.
All right, good. All right.
And I will tell you, that happened on the back of the stock also. Starbucks obviously outperformed PG&E's stock. So PG&E got that point. But trust me when I tell you that more people think Starbucks sucks than PG&E sucks right now.
What about Twitter and Disney? That's another big one.
We'll get to them. I want to round out
All
this
right.
division. We got Wells
All right,
Fargo
sure.
and Chipotle, the 2 seed and the 7 seed. Wells Fargo demolished Chipotle 3-0.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Starbucks and Wells Fargo in the Sweet 16, Boeing and Equifax in the Sweet 16, and those games will be March 25th.
Okay.
Moving on to Disney Twitter. Now, Disney Twitter was a surprise to me, okay? We actually had Disney at 1 point and Twitter at 2. So Twitter took Disney out.
Yes.
Which both of us picked that.
Mhm.
But it was the stock price of Disney dropped an abysmal drop for Disney. That's where they got their point, which struck me as pretty crazy because I know everyone thinks Twitter sucks, but I would have thought Disney's outperforming Twitter at this point, right? Wouldn't you think?
Outperforming them.
The stock performance. I know they've got the physical
Definitely
locations that are shut down.
They do.
But they have
a
Disney
new
Plus.
They have
Doesn't
a
it balance
they
out?
have a wink wink. They have a wink wink new CEO, which is probably causing some fear, and they just have a hell of a lot of turmoil. I mean, I think any business that's physically closing things is gonna scare some people,
Apparently, we were
especially
both right. Yeah.
especially since what is the what does the post COVID-19 world look like? Nobody knows right now.
Well, it certainly does not include Berkshire Hathaway in the March Sadness bracket because Apple crushed Berkshire 3-0.
Okay.
And in the 2-7, Tesla won 2-1 over JP Morgan. And Tesla won with Tesla sucks and Tesla controversy. That's how they won. So your Sweet 16 coming out of CEO's rule is Amazon versus Twitter, which I think is an amazing matchup.
Yeah.
And then
Apple Tesla is good too.
Apple Tesla. And again, Sweet 16 will happen March 25th, so some mid next week. Moving on back over to.
Let's hear some music.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. So far, we have no callers, so we need the music.
Oh. It's really, like we're really exposing ourselves here if nobody calls, but it's okay. We can edit that part out. We can edit the part out where we ask people to call.
People to call in. Yeah. No, I'm leaving all this in. I want them to experience.
I gotta be honest with you.
This is March Sadness.
And I'll sympathize with our listeners right now. Is that if I listen to a lot of shows, I listen to a lot of podcasts. If they ask people to call in, I would not call in.
You wouldn't call in. That's the thing.
And I'm not like necessarily a shy person. I mean, I'm like at 90% of the meetings that I showed up to at my previous boring company, I was often the only one talking. So
it's not for lack of confidence. It's mostly because we don't care.
Yeah. Reality bites.
So we already talked about Facebook, Pinterest. Facebook took that game easy. Snap Square in the 4-5. Square with the 3-0 demolishing of Snap. Square demolished Snap.
Now that I think about it, I screwed up there. I don't know why I picked Snap. Why would Snap? Yeah, but why would I? They wouldn't suck more than Square right now. I blew that one. That's fine.
I think you just have a personal animus against Snap's governance structure, which
maybe
is can we say is a hard thing for a normal person to wrap their brain around, that you would hate someone's governance structure.
Well, in this division, the fake public division, I mean, like legitimately, I would hate all of their governance structures.
Yeah, true. Which brings us to the 3-6, Walmart versus Spotify. Walmart Not even close. 3-0. Their stock.
Which is funny. Yeah, because Walmart is. This is an odd one because I would think that Walmart stock is doing relatively well compared to the market, and they're hiring like crazy. They're offering pathetic bonuses. So
Mhm.
I mean, they're selling, chicken nuggets. So I figured, maybe this is their time to shine. But yeah,
It is
despite
not.
all that,
It's not.
despite all that, okay.
Um, so Walmart took that 3-0, and Google Oracle.
Hmm.
Google surprisingly took it 2-1, and the one was the stock.
So Google's
Oracle's
stock
stock
is
dropped more
outperforming.
than Google's.
I
So
got to be honest with you. I know a lot about Oracle because I know a lot about Larry Ellison, and I know a lot about their ridiculous pay structure and everything. I don't even know what Oracle does. If you put a crossbow to my head,
that's true professionalism.
I don't even know if I could tell you what Oracle
You put a
sells.
crossbow to your head.
What do they? What's their main product?
They're,
Java or what do they do? Tell me.
aren't they internet pipes? That's
Well,
pretty much
are
what
you
they are.
asking me? I just told you I don't know. What the hell is an internet pipe?
That's what it sounds like. It's like an oil and
Yeah,
gas pipeline, but just
yeah. I don't know. I don't
internet.
know what's going on. I don't know.
Which sets us up for a Sweet 16 on the 25th of Facebook versus Square,
Hmm.
which there's no way Square comes out of that. Facebook is going to kill them. And Walmart versus Google. I actually think that might be the tightest matchup in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I picked. Who'd you pick out of that one? I picked Google.
I picked Google also, but I'm not so sure having seen Walmart demolished Spotify.
Hmm.
Demolished them. So there's a real shot here. Stakeholders rule division. We already said BlackRock lost in a big,
Hmm.
8-1 upset. GM took out BlackRock, but McDonald's versus Goldman Sachs in the 4-5. McDonald's took that 2-1. It was closer than
Yep.
you would have thought, and it was on the back of the stock price again. But McDonald's will face General Motors, which I think that's McDonald's to lose now, right? McDonald's has like a pretty clear path to the
I don't know.
to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I could see that one being a pretty good matchup though.
And then BP Exxon. Apparently, the universe hates BP significantly more than Exxon. We are living in the
Really?
past. Yeah,
Okay.
Exxon got the old losing. BP sucks. Trounced Exxon, and so did BP controversy. So
Wait, there was a BP one this round.
BP won this round 2-1. They're going on to
Okay.
the
All
Sweet
right.
16.
All right.
And Uber beat Lyft in the 2-7 matchup, 2-1. So our Elite Eight, our Sweet 16 is BP, Uber, and General Motors, McDonald's coming out of the stakeholders rule. So
I
that's what it
know.
looks like. That were the
I
matches.
I had a listener reach out to me who told me he was submitting a bracket. How did he do? Do you have his bracket handy?
He he chose a lot more upsets than I would have thought. Actually,
Okay, he's going for it. He's a gambler. He wants
I
to.
liked it. He picked GM.
Yeah. Okay, I picked GM, so let's not get too excited.
Also picked Wells Fargo to beat Starbucks and Boeing and get into the Final Four.
Nice.
And I believe his championship was Facebook Wells Fargo, and I think it was
Wow.
Facebook as the winner. So
Okay, so we all picked Duke. Okay,
we really are all on Duke, yeah. But
Dukerberg.
so that's it.
Zook. Zook. Yeah.
That's
How come no one's thought of this? How come no one's called that guy Zook? Coach Z.
I'm gonna go with because it makes no sense and it's weird. But that's what we got for March Sadness.
All right, let's play us out.
All right, March Sadness round. Our Sweet 16 coming up on March 25th. Join us live to get results. Maybe we'll set up a call-in in which no one will call in to talk results.
Oh,
If you've got thoughts
yeah.
about March Sadness 2020, did Coach Zuckerberg make the right choice this week in playing his starters, or should he just have sat them because he knew he was up against Pinterest? Call in.
Yeah,
Let's talk about it.
Good point. Yeah.
That's our March Sadness. Let's
All right, thanks, Matt.
I think now
Why don't you plug Patreon again, just for the hell of it, quickly,
all right. So we're going to be launching
quickly.
everywhere a Patreon account. If you search for Free Float Media on Patreon, you'll be able to donate $5 a month or $7.50 a month. Get on some tiers, get some special stuff. You'll get live access call in whenever you want it. We'll give you the unedited or the raw interview stuff that we've done for Market Medium and for Business Pants. So join us.
All right, let's talk about. Let's talk about this concept of ESG in the mainstream. Couple stories we're following here that illustrate this desire. The biggest one is our beautiful grand orange narcissist of a president is actually opining on stock buybacks, which I never thought would be possible. President Trump said yesterday that he would not oppose barring companies that receive federal assistance during the coronavirus pandemic from conducting stock buybacks. This is a pretty big deal in our world, wouldn't you say? And not only for the fact that he's actually siding with like the Bernie Bros, but just the idea that stock buybacks are being talked about, and maybe some people will start to understand what the hell they are, and blah 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 blah. But what's your reaction to this?
So
Are you surprised that Trump did this?
So he said he would not oppose them buying back shares, or he would
No, he
oppose
would
them.
not oppose barring them, which is basically what
Oh,
he's saying is
barring
that
them, barring them.
he's okay with that. Although, of course, he does say a lot of things and doesn't back them up. But at least vocally, verbally, he's saying that he's okay with barring buybacks.
Well, let's talk about this from the standpoint of social contract,
Hmm.
because what do we want if the federal government has to help companies? The reason why they would help the companies is, well, simultaneously economic and job related, right? But those companies needing to be bailed out, I think in the financial crisis, it was a question of violating the social contract. With a pandemic, is it also the same thing? Are we saying that any company that would receive like an airline, if they received government assistance, did they enter a different social contract? Did they violate a social contract? How do you? I mean, like, how do you process
I
that?
know it's confusing. I don't know. I don't know how, because at the same time, Trump was also saying that he would be okay with taking equity in companies if the government bailouts, much like happened during the financial meltdown in 2008, where the government took interest in what GM.
Yeah, and here's the great irony
Hmm.
of which I actually think is a smart idea, because the great
Hmm.
irony is now is the time where if you're a company with cash
Hmm.
and you have enough to float your employees and keep your operations running, or you've given yourself, if you've basically planned for the future and you have cash on hand and you can survive, weather the pandemic, and you kind of like think that that's a real possibility, now's a great time to buy back your stock. It's like the market's
Now,
cratered.
yeah, but who would have the?
Well,
I mean, I
that's
guess there probably are. I know AT&T is in the news because they are canceling plans to buy back $4 billion of its own shares. But who would have the guts to do it now? I mean,
I mean,
it just seems.
I look at Apple, right? They got $260
Yeah,
billion in cash. They were buying back shares when it was overpriced. Now is when you buy back shares when it's underpriced,
right.
because
I
you were
got to be
smart
honest with
enough to
you.
sit on cash.
I know we probably differ here because I'm the weird, hippie overland loser. And this is
All
a good
those things
time
are
to bring
true.
up our critique. I think we should go into this because I personally think I cannot think of a reason why buyback should be allowed at all. I don't get it on any level.
I see. I
Because
don't. It's. I fundamentally don't have a problem with buybacks. In fact,
why? Why?
I fundamentally don't have a problem with the idea of even like some level of shareholder centricity. Like I don't. I don't.
But prove to me it's not market manipulation. If they
It's
can prove that
it's
and
how and
not
when
pay
they do
and
it.
and not pay their executives in equity, then maybe I'd be less upset. But doesn't this prove that in the modern world in 2020, we always should be preparing for black swan events? Just and not just because we want to make sure our portfolios are strong, but just because we want to take care of our stakeholders, right? I mean,
Well, that's my
isn't this
bigger
what?
problem.
Yeah.
Is the trade-off of the buybacks, right? Like,
Then there should be no. Then we should never be buying back. We should always
but
be.
no, you can't say that because there's a time when the trade-off is worth it, right? Like,
Yeah, see, I don't see it. I mean, again, if you could prove to me somehow that it's not market manipulation and it's not enriching executives in the short term, maybe I would begin to listen. But I get hung up there. I mean, I
but think
spent
about
a
it
lot
from
of
the
years as a compensation analyst, and I know how executives are paid. They're not paid in salary. They're paid by meeting things like earnings per share targets. So yeah, I'm uncomfortable with it.
But that has recency bias built in because the modern incarnation of
Don't care.
buybacks are more the problem. If you flip it from the other side, right? Like, there's a bunch of blowhards on the sell side who tell you how much a company's worth. And if you are like Elon Musk and you're sitting around and they basically are shorting your company, they're telling you you're an idiot and you're overvalued and all this stuff. One way to actually express the fact that you believe that you're undervalued, having nothing to do with compensation, is to go to the open market and say, if you think we're undervalued, I'm going to take some of the cash I have. I want to buy my shares back because I think the shares are going to. I think the sky's the limit on our company. We're building amazing things. It's like you can show belief in the company if you're a company doing that, and you can actually punish the market who doesn't believe in your innovation because the market thinks so short term. The problem with the buybacks has been when American Airlines is doing it after bankruptcy, or when investors go into a company that's sitting on cash and says, you have all this cash, you should be doing it. Like, that is a problem because they're not
But
actually doing it for what it's built to,
yeah, but
where it's built to be most effective.
couldn't they just make that the argument that they're doing it for the reasons why you said that are the good reasons?
They
This is
can,
why
but if you have no cash and you have a ton of debt, then that argument makes no sense.
because they could just tell you they think it's undervalued. They just know it is, and then that's it. End of the story.
But
I,
if you have no float and you have like my question is about balance, right? When Apple buys back their
okay,
shares and they're
yeah.
sitting on $260 billion in cash, I'm kind of like, well, you got a lot of cash. It's not a big deal. You're like prepared for the future. I'm more wondering why more of that cash isn't to R&D. Why don't you burn that money
Well,
for whatever
yeah,
the next generation of something is?
yeah. Create a new moneymaker. Okay, what about this? What about the idea of introducing the concept of like stakeholder triggers, so that you're before you're allowed to do buybacks, you can prove that I don't know, I'm completely making up numbers here, but that you could, pay your workforce for 2 months, in the time of a pandemic or whatever, whatever the black swan event is. What about stakeholder triggers? You like that idea?
So that idea is effectively what banks are. That's the capital requirements of being a bank, right? Like, effectively, you're saying if there's a run on the bank, there's a certain amount of money by regulation that you need to keep in the bank. And I think
For all companies, though. Yeah.
what you're effectively proposing
Mhm.
is treating all companies as if they
Of
need a
course,
minimum
yes,
cushion for stakeholder purposes, whether it's their
definitely.
suppliers or their employees or whatever the stakeholder du jour may be. But they need a certain cushion in the event of a black swan event or the event of something
Absolutely.
unforeseen.
Because what if it's
I
just like
don't.
a what if it's just like a what if it's a I mean, I guess a grocery store is that maybe that's a bad example now because they seem to be doing well, but what if it's a part of an industry that needs to be going strong at a time like this, and it can't keep going for whatever reason, but we really need, you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Well, you're trying
there are
to
just
just
so
say that
yeah,
some industries are more important than others in the middle of a pandemic, and those industries need to have plan, or not just a pandemic, right? Like, but in the middle of a dire situation, like 9/11
sure, like
happens, right?
yeah, we should definitely be making a list of like our top 15 potential black swan events at this point, right? I mean, but yeah,
I
I feel strongly about this.
but I I mean, in
Let's go
some
into
ways, I
our.
feel like it's the market should punish those companies. It's one thing with a bank. Actually, the market doesn't really punish the banks either. I mean, like I think we look at banks and they're more like utilities. We do this with utilities. Like utilities can't take out a certain amount, excess debt. They have to pass most of their earnings on as dividends. Like they're highly regulated. But I don't think you want to think of like Apple and Amazon as utilities in quite the same way. But my question would be, if you're a
Doesn't mean
shareholder,
we
if you're a
shouldn't, though. Yeah.
long-term shareholder, that
Yeah.
this is the companies you should punish aren't just like bad at climate change. They're also sort of not managing the long-term stakeholder very
Well.
well, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the investor's role, and I think part of the disconnect is investors don't act that way, and not en masse. They just like the market doesn't really act that way. The market reacts in nanoseconds and not over those long periods of time. But I think the shareholders, the investors who are thinking about ESG are think about that more. I mean, I think there is a class of investor that does think about that. I'm not sure you need a regulatory mechanism for that. I think more and more
You don't
shareholders
think there should be,
are
but
shifting
but
that way.
more but more often than not, you don't think should be a regulatory mechanism for many things, right? I think you think
Regulators
the
lag.
market should take care of it.
I don't think markets take care of shit on their own necessarily, but regulators lag and they usually half-ass the regulations when they get there. I
Well,
like Dodd Frank. Like
that's why we need half the legislators to be women, and then they'll take care of this mess.
I'm all in on the Ron Swanson theory of regulation, which is don't half-ass one thing or half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. Like when there's a financial crisis, you need to go in with your whole ass and cut that like cut up the banks so that investment banking, market making is separated from retail banking. That they should have repealed Glass-Steagall, but they don't do that. They do some sort of half-ass version, and they kind of like try to cap something over here and limit something over there. It's just dumb. It doesn't work that way. And when you're in the middle, if you want to talk about stakeholder capitalism and a regulator's role in that, then the regulator's role is to effectively just say, these are your five stakeholders that you need to manage, and we are going to set a cap on how much. If that's what regulators want to do, then they got to do the whole thing. They can't do it piecemeal. They can't band-aid it over time, and they can't do what the GOP is doing right now in America, which is to say, I think we've solved our coronavirus problem by giving massive corporate tax breaks,
Oh,
because that
I can't even talk about
doesn't
that.
do the thing you want it to do.
Oh,
The
let me raise
problem
another
are the
point here.
people, the employees are going to be, they don't
All
have
right,
paid time off. That's your
get
problem.
off your couch.
And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm on the couch
Stop
now.
filibustering. Here's another terrible move the Republicans are making, and this is not about the Republicans, but they just so happen to be the ones pushing this idea. And this stays in our topic of ESG in the mainstream. And this is one that always just makes me really angry, because it's just laughable that ESG corporate governance has been going strong for at least a couple decades now, and they have made they have made they just haven't broken through at all to educate people how these people are paid. But I'm going to stop babbling. I'll just tell you what's going on. Senate GOP bailout bill caps executive pay. That's the headline, right? That's a beautiful headline. That sounds like Bernie Bros rejoice, right? Oh, good. We're capping executive pay. But here are the details of this. Executives at companies that would receive bailout cash from the coronavirus relief bill would see their annual compensation capped for 2 years. Again, that sounds great, but the next sentence, according to the language, uh, an executive who makes more than $425,000, which is all of the S&P 500 CEOs, cannot get a raise in their salary for 2 years. So it's limiting it to salary only. And again, to your average person, your average American, that sounds like a major impressive win. But I have to tell you, people, executives are not paid by salary. It's a completely insignificant part of their total compensation. All it does is it represents a base to which other things are multiplied, right? So So maybe your bonus is set to, your maximum bonus is set to 500% of your salary. So if your salary is $1 million, you can also earn $5 million for your bonus. So it's pointless. It's just pointless because all the company has to do is change the 500% of salary bonus to 700% of salary bonus, and there you go. The executive is suddenly making more money. Not only that, but in times like this, just like it happened in 2008, all of these executives are going to get a shitload of options thrown at them with extremely low strike prices, with the idea of let's build the company back up and get strong again. And that's just going to happen naturally because the market is eventually going to rebound from this naturally. Stock prices are going to go up after this is all over. I hate to tell you, people. And these executives are going to make a crap load of money just by sitting there. It's not for performance. It's just for sitting there. They're just going to benefit off of market swings. So I don't know why we can't like teach people about this. I don't really get it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've told even my wife, who's a very smart woman with a master's degree. I tell her repeatedly that when you think of your pay from your company, it's not your salary. You have to think of all of the benefits, all your bonuses, everything lumped into one. That's the total number. So, why does ESG suck so much at this, Matt? Like, and no, but really,
That's
and
where
and
we're
this
ending.
this and this is why I agreed to be a part of this company. One of the reasons is that like it is just my desire, and I don't know if I'm not saying we've succeeded so far to get some of this stuff out to regular people. Like I'm supposed to be the one to try to do that, and I think I've failed so far. But why, why can't we? Why can't this stuff be taught to regular people? Why is ESG so just like opaque and jargon filled and hard to understand? And why? I don't get it. Why?
You know, I,
I mean, people talk about salary caps in the NFL like they're experts, like they're creating budgets for third world countries. But even stuff like this, it just like makes no sense to people. It just bugs me.
I mean, look, I wasn't a compensation expert, but I think the point actually of this segment that we're talking about right now,
Hmm.
when we're talking about buybacks and we're talking about compensation, is that we are at a moment where it may be more possible to mainstream these concepts than ever before
No, yeah,
because
if a Democrat wins the White House
I
in
don't think
America.
it's political. I actually think that like there's a public consciousness to these things, and a media consciousness
Except
to
that when
these
this is all
things.
over, this just gonna be relief that they can like finally go back to the bowling alley and Target. I don't. You think it's gonna be like
I th-
they're gonna be thinking, oh, good, now we can get to work at fixing compensation packages.
no, but I think the disparity between um, how people with money can rebound and people without it. I think the idea of like, do you like? I heard no
Hope you're
mainstream
right.
conversation about paid time off. It was an
That's
ESG
true.
conversation, right? There was never a
Hmm.
mainstream conversation about that
True.
prior to this pandemic. And
Or
as
stock
soon as it
buybacks.
hit, or stock buybacks, as soon as it hit, as soon as this pandemic hit, the first thing you're reading about is, wow, we're in the US, we're totally fucked because we don't have paid time off. And the ESG community, in a way, is sitting around being like, yeah, we've been talking about this for like a decade, how that's important to take care of your stakeholders as a corporate entity because there is no float, there's no room for failure. And now you have failure
Right.
and there's no room for it. But I think in the aftermath of this, it's not people are just going to go back to their bowling alley. I think you're talking about like 15% unemployment and recession bordering on depression levels in this country. We had an electrician over just today, and he's like, "We have to shut down. We're a company of 8 people, and we're gonna shut down the company." And it's like it's check to check. It's not, and there's no float. Like there's nothing you can do.
Mhm.
I think those people will wake up and say, "Wait a minute, you know, if you're a contractor at Facebook, you wake up and you say, wait a minute, I know I've been doing this as like thinking the gig economy is a great idea, but the people who are doing the same work as me who are full-time employees, basically come back and they're making $200,000-$300,000 a year. Zuckerberg has entire say over whether or not I'm an employee. I have no say whatsoever. There is no market mechanism for this. I'm out of a job, and the money that these companies are getting from the government is going to buy back their stock. It's not even
Mhm.
going to like make sure that humans are okay in the middle of a pandemic. There is nothing more personal than health. And I think because it's so personal, you are going to see the financial crisis was not personal to people. This is personal, and I think that you're going to see a level of sort of interest in how a company spends its money that didn't exist before. I mean, I hope,
Well,
I,
I
I
hope you're
think
right
so.
because you're typically the pessimist in the group, so I hope you're right.
Like I'm having
It's just
conversations with buybacks with people who didn't know what buybacks were 20 minutes ago, right? Like,
why. But what's going on? What is wrong with CNBC, and how do they write articles about things like this about salary and not? How do they not go into more detail about what it really means? That's the
uh,
part that bugs me.
well, yeah, I mean, I think that like getting the content out versus getting the nuance. Nuance is hard. It's hard for people to understand.
But
Compensation is the worst.
I'm looking at the writer of this article, Lauren Hirsch, MBA from the School of Business at Dartmouth. Really, the nuance is hard. No, really. I mean, and I really am at a loss for words. Why? Why is the nuance hard? Is it that CNBC's
Because you don't
best
click
interest
on
is not?
nuance.
But no, but I mean, I'm going beyond the fold here. I mean, there's a headline, there's the outline of the article, but then there's also a big, there's several, there's like at least 20 paragraphs.
Yeah, you
Again,
are.
I
My
mean,
point is
uh,
you are, but most people
but
don't
why?
go
But why?
beyond that.
How? Why is ESG? Why is ESG? Why have all the professionals? I don't know how many professionals there are working now at ESG. I mean, there's got to be
Everyone's an
many,
ESG
several.
professional now.
So why can't we get this message out?
Because whenever you're talking about one
You know who the
idiosyncratic
most successful
message,
one is? You know who the most successful one is? Abigail Disney. She's like done the best job getting out an ESG message in the last 20 years. And I don't and maybe only because her last name is Disney.
that's why. I mean, think about the people
Okay.
who do this, right? Like, I also think there's a misconception about what ESG does and solves for anyway. So having this conversation outside of ESG, you don't necessarily even associate it with ESG. And
Right, it's
inside
true. It
of
doesn't and
ESG, there's like a
yeah.
handful of people who get it themselves. Like most
Well, it doesn't
people are
have to be
like, the climate is
yeah,
is dying. That's why I'm here. They don't care about
right. And we
this.
don't have to talk about this in terms of ESG like it's not necessary, but again, I mean, we've talked about it a lot and it's worth hammering, which is that the Business Roundtable made a promise that we're going to now pay attention to stakeholders. And and I mean this actually sincerely. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm really looking at them to come out with something soon about this because this is their moment. You told me that you saw some press release that they're working on a response or something to all
They
this.
have a COVID-19 task force.
Okay, I'm looking at them to lead through this because if what they're really if we joked about it before, but if the real true reason that they came out with this stakeholder capitalism thing is that they're trying to stave off revolution, they're trying to remain in power by handing out some more graham crackers to keep people happy. This is this is going to accelerate that. If what Matt is saying is true, that people are going to start paying more attention to this, then it would behoove the Business Roundtable to get involved.
Look, a
I mean,
Matt.
there's so many things that they can do. I mean, it's really unlimited the amount of things that we can do now to make sure that our biggest corporations are paying attention to stakeholders, and this is the unfortunate learning lesson of our life, right? Of our lives, of our reality bites live. This is the moment.
I mean, but imagine if you are like, imagine if you work at American Airlines right now,
Hmm.
and you don't
I
get
wish
paid
I
time
had a
off.
job.
There's no
Yeah, yeah.
PTO for you, right? Like
Uh-huh.
just imagine a situation where that's the case. And the US government basically gives the entire industry $60 billion to keep it afloat. And you find out afterwards that Delta Airlines, took their, 10 billion that they got and they spent a billion buying back their shares.
Mhm.
Imagine if you heard that and you realized like $1 billion and you've got 20,000 employees or whatever, you could have floated them for a year
Hmm.
time off where we don't have to get sick, we don't have to fill hospital beds, we could have self quarantined. I think this will get personal really, really fast, and people are going to watch what these companies do with their money in a way that maybe they haven't. And that also probably means, the executives, because it's not the executives who are at risk. They have the same health risk that everybody
Yeah,
else
especially
has.
with these horse shit riders where they can't get like a bump in their salary.
But I mean, like they're not taking monetary risk unless they levered
No,
themselves up in real life, like outside of
no.
corporate
Any
life.
any executive that stays at these S&P 500 companies, I mean, notwithstanding the company goes into bankruptcy, it's a whole nother idea.
I
But
mean,
but I guarantee you, 5 years from now, the executives who stay through this at these companies are going to make more money because of what happens with their stock portfolio.
if they survive it, they will. They absolutely will.
Yeah,
I mean,
more money.
like I think the that sort of, like, if you have a lot of money and you have it all at risk in the stock market, and you watch your shares go from $40 to $5, and you think, it's hard not to think, oh my god, I lost everything. But the reality is you kind of haven't. Like, in a real sense, you have the necessary means to weather COVID-19 if
Sure.
you don't get it, or if you get it, you at
Well,
least have
yeah,
access to some level of health care. But the
yeah.
people who get, no paid time off, if they see that executive sort of buy back into the market, buy shares in the market, they get paid, their salaries don't get capped, or they pay themselves 7x, in shares with, options that are, instant vest options. I think that the nuance of that becomes much harder. You're paying much more attention to it, and it's harder to stomach. I think that there's a
Well,
real
why
chance of that.
why are
I'm not
we
100%, but I think there's a chance.
how come the first thing we're hearing is not just like an automatic enforcement of automatic mandatory paid sick time off? Why is that not being talked about? Why I don't even understand that. Why are we even
Yeah.
but why are we even floating like checks to corporations or I don't understand why that's not the first thing that we're passing.
You're
I
asking the
mean,
wrong guy.
yeah, I don't know. Okay. I yeah, it's a it's a disturbing rabbit hole, but I'll tell you this. There's an article. Let's just get to the headlines now. Let's just go around, I will ask you to, if you want, you can open up the news headline, the news document, and there's 9 pages of stories. So if you want to talk about anything, let's just do it now.
All right.
As we wait for our our our
Our
lonely
callers.
person in Des Moines to call in. Um, I'll tell you this: the Berkshire Hathaway board is the oldest board in America. 64-year-old Bill Gates just stepped down and was replaced by 68-year-old Ken Chenault, who used to be the CEO of American Express. So that's something.
I like that they got slightly older. It's comforting.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I look at Bill Gates. I didn't know you could get older. So yeah. Uh, there's a lot in here. Is there anything that interests you?
I'm pulling it up as we speak. And yet there is a lot in here.
Okay, that's something I want to talk about. Um,
What
the
is it?
one that really, the one that surprised me. Okay, so talking about the spike in web traffic, right? This is Verizon's reporting with a spike in web traffic. So it's up 20% in 1 week, which makes for a good headline. But then when you really do the math, I'm thinking, okay, say we're already online, and I'm just pulling a random number out of my butt. I'm sure it's low. Say we're already online 20 hours a week. Now we're online 24 hours a week. Is that a big deal? I mean, doesn't that just say that we're online way too much? But okay, beyond that, in a week over week comparison, streaming demand increased 12%. So streaming demand is, I'm guessing that's video.
In
Uh,
Netflix and
yeah.
YouTube and
Web traffic climbed 20%. VPN usage, this is interesting, jumped 30%. So maybe people are
Virtual
moving
work.
all their shady like meth drug dealing from the street to
No,
the
that's all
internet.
logging into like work remotely.
Or
VPN.
okay, that's right. Or maybe like pirated movies or who knows. You're probably right though. And then finally, no, gaming. I love this one. Gaming skyrocketed 75%. In fact, the only thing that I've been sitting around here thinking like God, I wish I had more money and then I wasn't afraid to death about paying my mortgage because now would be the perfect time to buy an Xbox or something because I'm just like I want no, it's true. I want to like escape into something. And it's funny that the one thing that skyrocketed the most online is gaming.
Well, turns out
75%. And you know what? You know what the thing that remains constant out of all this, the one thing that hasn't changed at all, which scares me personally, maybe because I'm a Gen Xer, social media usage. Same. Right? So it's clear to me that we're already doing way too much social media. There's not even a change.
well, you'll be happy to know that GameStop agrees with you, according to
Yeah,
one of the articles you pulled, calling itself "quote essential retail."
it might be. No, I mean, if you think about it, okay,
There's
here's the
no
sad
way it
thing.
is. Send the people
Here's
home.
here's some inside Damien talk. I wish we had some music for that. But
Hold on, I'll come up with something while you're talking.
here are the two things that are keeping me sane because I'm having like probably like a lot of people of my generation. I mean, from what I'm hearing from my friends is that like basically everybody in my generation and class and education level is kind of experiencing this in the same way. I don't know why, but it just happens to be that way. And I'm on a roller coaster of like anxiety these days. And I'm usually pretty laid back, but so here's how I'm dealing with it. I'm dealing with it by watching TV programming, streaming stuff that is pre-smartphone content, right? For some reason, it soothes me. There's a
Like
pre
'90s content.
No, like I'm actually starting to watch Mary Tyler Moore from the
Oh
1970s, which I've never
snap!
watched before. I know, and it's completely calming me. I have no idea why. Maybe because there's no internet, there's no smartphones. It's having a calming effect on me. And the other thing I'm doing is reading more, which I think makes sense. So I get that people need anxiety busters, and I can see from gaming going up 75% online, then maybe GameStop is essential. If if Popeyes, I get like a text from Popeyes every 20 minutes telling me that delivery is free, then why can't GameStop be essential?
I guess that's a valid question.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to me there. I don't know I don't know why I got so animated.
Yeah, you're fired up today.
Yeah, I am.
Been on the couch all
I don't know,
day.
I just thought that was funny that social media usage has not changed at all. So we're already at pandemic levels of social media usage.
I do like the fact that social distancing is social media's business model. So that's
Yeah,
probably
exactly. That's exactly true. No,
that's
that is exactly right. I
probably
mean,
not a big
and this
switch.
and this goes along with the idea that all we're doing is fast forwarding our dystopia. And I think that GameStop as an essential retail is the perfect proof that of our pending dystopia. Also, the work from home they're calling is obviously going to go through a boom market. And this is going to most people that I've talked to about this think that this is going to be one of the most seismic shifts of everything happening now and I hear this a lot from some buddies in Europe who have not they're not as far along with the work at home thing, and they think it's going to just be a major change over there. It's really just going to change everything. Uh, and then the last thing in my dystopia column here is that Jim Cramer, who I like to think of as a hipster doofus who hangs out with Jerry Seinfeld, is wondering and worrying that the post coronavirus world will be comprised of only three retailers: Amazon, Walmart, and Costco, which is crazy to think about, but when you think about dystopia, and I think that the movie that does the best job of portraying dystopia is a movie called Idiocracy, which was put out, oh God, it's like 20 years ago, but it's amazing how much it got right and gets right. And this is from the creator of Silicon Valley and Beavis and Butthead. It's a great movie if you haven't seen it. But that's basically one of the things they theorized on is how quickly America is going to be run by like a handful of corporations. So that's what we're talking about. Jim Cramer worrying that post COVID-19 US will have 3 retailers. Are you with him on that one?
I actually think yeah, there's some merit. There's some merit to that, but I think people are gonna like be afraid to leave their communities, and
Mhm.
I don't think I think that means local
And homes,
retailers. I think you could get like mid tier retailers that just get cannibalized. That's probably
right?
true.
Okay, so they're either going to be at
Super
home
large or super
more
small.
delivering, or they're going to want to take care of local business owners.
Yeah, it's gonna be like you want to go to the store where you know, like Betsy and Butch who run it, or you're gonna want it to be delivered by a drone. Like you don't want anyone to come near you at all ever again, and that'll be the dichotomy. I think the middle ground is where you'll lose retailers.
What do you think about this? Walmart is showing off and tooting their horn that they are essentially going to be paying full-time hourly associates a $300 bonus.
It's something.
I guess so, but I mean, yeah, right? I mean, what the? I don't know.
It's not even a week
That
of pay.
it's I find that to be just so depressing.
But
Okay,
I actually think the
uh,
big story today was not
yeah.
was the
What do you have?
senators who unloaded all their stock
Oh my
in
God,
advance of
yeah.
this. So
Well,
there's
that's a criminal case, basically. That's probably. I mean, I guess that's most likely just sort of insider trading. I mean, they actually passed a law about this very thing about the right the I'm sure this goes to the executive branch, but the legislative branch and the executive branch who have this insider information that they have a blackout period, right? I mean, this is
do they? I don't
right.
think
Am I
they
wrong?
do actually.
I thought okay, maybe I'm wrong.
Uh,
I thought that they do have a specific trading blackout period based on the information they're getting.
Well, I think what's fascinating about it is in the same vein of what we were talking about, like the mainstreaming of
Mhm.
ESG. This sort of fits in that to me, like where
That's true. That's true.
the congressional stock ownership and sales and stuff like that is not a like super well studied phenomenon, um, and I think it just wakes people up to the idea that like companies, politicians, like people with money do stuff to protect their money more than they do stuff to protect the people whom they're supposed to serve with that money necessarily, like your customer or
Mhm.
your constituent. Yeah, I just think that this story feels like that, like a low level wake up to that too.
I hope so. I say it more, but I applaud ProPublica for many things, and this is another great story out of ProPublica.
You woke up super liberal this morning. It's, you're like
What are you talking about?
you're like
I'm a bearded guy from Portland, Maine. What do you think?
oh no, I know you are.
It's not about liberal. It's not about liberal. I believe in stakeholders. Oh, let's get to our. Well, speaking of that, I like it. Let's. Can you at least read the critique we got? We should talk about that.
All right, so we
Do you have
gotta
it handy?
yeah. Um I can get it
Because
handy.
I think that I think I'm a bit the subject of this, and I like it. So let's get at it.
I'm not sure that you're totally the subject to this. So this is what it looked like. Okay,
Well, you seem to be you're the calmer, more measured version of this show.
I'm just
You're
angry
the
about different things. So
I seem the one who's basically saying that CEOs should be, I said to you earlier that CEOs could be paid $1 for the next 5 years and they'll be absolutely fine. So I don't think that I think I'm definitely crazier than you are.
well, that's true. But
Yeah.
so here was the feedback. And
Hmm.
again, we got this on LinkedIn from a listener who likes a lot of what we do, I think. I tell myself
Yeah, right,
when
okay.
I
Well,
hug a
whatever. Yeah.
teddy bear to
You
sleep
don't
tonight.
have to. I don't even care. I don't even care if you like it or dislike it as long as they're listening.
Yeah.
I really don't care.
Um,
I mean, if you want to, like, maybe it's your desire to hate on like a weird bearded liberal.
no.
So I'm saying, like, no, not you, but our listeners. Then, if that's your thing, you should listen to us daily and interact with us.
I mean, the
Let's
positive
argue
side,
about some stuff.
the positive side
Yeah.
of this feedback was they appreciate the sort of no bullshit ESG approach. Like, and I don't mean the ESG ness of it. I mean
Because nobody appreciates that.
there's no pretense to what we're saying when we're talking about things ESG related. We're not couching
Mhm.
it in products. We're not. I think they appreciate sort of like
So we're the only ones in the world
we're,
probably doing that.
we really are. We're sort of
Yeah.
open source ESG is what
Mhm.
I like to think of. The feedback that was a little like more critical was that
Okay, I
we take
like
a
it.
view
Yeah.
that that often comes off as anti-shareholder.
Oh,
And
let's talk about this.
they said they knew
Yeah.
this probably wasn't the case in reality, but you know shareholders are our stakeholder, and it's about balance and a sort of a balanced conversation.
Okay. I like this because I mean I feel like you're gonna have a lot more to say about this because you're Ivy League educated, but um, but I wonder. I think maybe he's right. I'm talking about myself. You can talk about yourself. And because and I like I'm like thankful for the Business Roundtable for like making me feel like a, a human being. Like I'm a they've they
They
have like
validate you.
they validate my existence now, and I don't have to sound like a crazy liberal. But in a sense, uh, I I am not anti-shareholder, but I believe in the pantheon of how a corporation sort of what and who it affects. They should be considered 1/7. Is that the right math? If I'm thinking of the right stakeholders, they should be considered a minority percentage of who we think about. They're certainly one of the stakeholders that we need to take seriously, of course, but uh, to the extent to which we've overvalued them recently, and to the extent which we've done that uh, for short term gain, I think is just an extreme problem. So I don't know. Maybe do you think that makes me anti-shareholder? I don't know. I mean, I like this. I like this critique, though.
I
Do you think?
think
What do you think?
I think
Fuck
I
the shareholders. There, I said it. No, I'm kidding.
I do think I also agree that that he was right. That in terms of our narrative skew, we focused a lot more on other stakeholders than shareholders, at least recently, and in part because of the Business Roundtable. But I do think that
Shareholders don't need us. They don't need us to take
but
care of them.
shareholders are taking like a significant portion of risk before the company. It's one thing. I draw a couple distinctions. One distinction is like a widely held mature company, right? Like because the shareholders of the widely held mature company are not. They own a fake piece of paper that says that they're entitled to nothing effectively, right? Like the company does not have to pay a dividend if they choose not to. They get a vote if they allow it. And other than that, you don't really own anything. You didn't give the company that money because it's not on the IPO. You bought it on the secondary market, and all you want is for that piece of paper, the number associated with that piece of paper to go up. And to me, there's something really fake and flimsy about being a shareholder in that regard. But before that happens, like in a way, SoftBank and the shit that they get for WeWork, they took a tremendous amount of risk by handing WeWork money and saying build something. And I think
Who
there's
is they?
SoftBank does, right? Like shareholders do. Shareholders, when they're, especially in private equity or early stage or angel investors, they have money and they're taking some risk with that money, and I appreciate that risk. Now, this does not mean that they should be the central stakeholder that we kowtow to, because I do think employees are taking risk, and there are
Yeah.
others who take risk.
Here's the problem is that as recently as a couple of years ago, I don't know if this has changed. I'm looking as you talk, but according to the New York Times, 84%, and this is from the New York Times. I didn't even, I dropped the word a whopping 84%. That's their hyperbole. 84% of all stocks owned by Americans belong to the wealthiest 10% of households. And then I'm also looking at something that tells me that 21% of households making less than $30,000 own stock. So that's that's why I am where I am now, because it's the they. It's like, who are these people that are owning the stocks? And that's why I think I fall on this side of the divide here, is because are we just worrying about benefiting the people that don't really need the benefit in the first place? I mean,
Well, I mean, I've divorced the social commentary in some ways from it, right? Like,
well, not
because,
lucky for you. You're lucky.
well, maybe. I mean, I just think of
Yeah,
the system, the construct of the system is if you have money and you take risk, the you gain something from you have the potential to gain something from that risk. And that's not the system
I
that
hear
I
you.
would have made necessarily, or
Right.
the
Well,
system,
okay. So,
but it
but
is
if we're
the
talking about
system.
stakeholders, okay, but we're talking about stakeholders, and we're giving a shit about workers, and we're talking about the term and the time of a global pandemic. w- What about changing share ownership? What about all employees of S&P 500 companies being paid in stock, like a portion being paid in stock? How come they're not owners of these companies?
I think
How is it that
I'm
how
okay
is it
with
that
that.
21%? I mean, this is where it has to change. I mean, and this would make someone like me give a shit more about shareholders as one of the stakeholders. If actually the 90% part of America that wasn't the wealthiest started to own stock.
Well, I mean, like, in a way, like Amazon, when they bought Whole Foods did that when Whole Foods is publicly traded. Whole Foods would give everybody a stock, and a lot of companies offer discounted stock purchase plans, so they could take their earnings, their salary, and they could purchase the stock. I think the great divide is in stuff like healthcare and pay time off and all these other systemic problems that mean that if you're making $30,000 or less per year, you can't afford to just go buy some stuff. You would just have to sell the stock immediately to live check to check. I think enough of America lives check to check that that is what
Well,
inhibits them being
right.
share owners, because you can't
Well, I
take
think
that risk.
yeah,
There's no float.
I I think part of the conversation of stock buybacks is, ensure, and this is where Elizabeth Warren would agree with me, is that before we get into conversations about stock buybacks, corporations should be paying a living wage so that they're not living paycheck to paycheck. And yeah, part of that living wage could be equity in the company. I mean, it might actually create for better workers in general, knowing that their efforts were, helping the share price. But anyway, keep going. Just wanted to interrupt with
Well,
that.
I mean, like, and to the point of the sort of critique of like a lot of our conversations. Like, I don't feel ironically, I feel very pro shareholder in the way that when shareholders don't have rights, I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand why you'd be a shareholder. Like, the when we talk about Facebook, it's very much like a corporate construct that I don't understand as useful, like in markets. It's like, why would anybody say one white guy should have the keys to 2.5 billion people's thoughts? Like, I think that's a
Hmm.
terrible, terrible idea. And in fact, I think shareholders are the ones who should rise up and say, this
Yeah,
doesn't work for us. We're taking all of the risk because you don't
yeah.
own any of the capital.
And they might, if it didn't just represent the most wealthy among us. I mean, and this is the other point that we were going to hammer a lot this year, is to remind people that corporations on some levels do act like democracies, right? I mean, shareholders do have a voice, and I think if we did see more workers owning shares, and maybe these votes would start to change. But I do want to remind everyone in times like this that you can vote against stuff that pisses you off, like buybacks.
Oh, well, and I think that in part is why the show is skewed a little bit that way, because I think there's a consciousness of the other stakeholders that is new today
Okay.
and
Well,
unique today.
yeah, it's the same as like the ESG data, like new data versus old data conversation,
I
sort of.
think that's right. I think that like
Yeah,
we're talking about stakeholders in a way that we haven't talked about them ever in the context, and not to
yeah,
say in
that's true.
academia they did, but I mean in practice, I think there's a real conversation about what a stakeholder is and how do you manage them. And the Business Roundtable made
Yeah,
an opening to have a conversation
right.
that ignores shareholders more, and I think a lot of our content actually sort of revolves around that opening and what it
Yeah,
means. And as a shareholder, I actually think a lot of the research that I've spent time on is, well, as a shareholder of a company, how do I measure the stakeholders and the balance between them, and whether or not it's important that it is balanced or not. Like, should it be skewed one way or another? Should we skew to shareholders or employees or
hmm
or governments or someone else or the environment? Because I think a lot of
and
people
that's
in our
yeah,
field would say, shareholders are the problem inhibiting creating environmental damage.
maybe, yeah,
I think that's a real conversation that's happened in the last 10 years
right.
with the ESG crowd. And I think that it's this weird mix of I think the critique is right that balance is what's necessary. And I think,
Yeah,
and
I agree with that. But again, they're
yeah,
one of like 6 or 7 stakeholders, so it's not a 50-50 balance either.
no, it's not one.
In
It's
my
yeah,
view, in
it's
my
not a
view.
binary balance. I think it's about, but I'm not sure all stakeholders are also created equal. I think I feel very
How dare
idiosyncratic about
you?
it. Like
I
I
will
just
say
don't.
this to our listener too, is that I think where I sound anti-shareholder, because I know deep down I'm not, is that I think we live in an age where the shareholder really seems to be benefiting, especially at the negative detriment of all the other stakeholders. Are these short termists, these short term shareholders? Those are the ones I think I'm angry about. I think if I could figure out how to like legislate, regulate them out of existence, I think I would my my anti-shareholder rant would probably go away, because as a corporate governance dude, and that's what I really am, I look at it as like I look at everything as long term, right? I think that that's how we should be investing in companies to ensure long term sustainability. So I think that's probably where my anger is, and probably why I sound anti shareholder, is that I'm just sick of the short termism of it all.
Well, I think
Me and
that
Elon
yeah.
Musk in agreement
Well,
once again.
I think that hits the nail on the head. I think actually more than anything, we are anti short term in favor of
Hmm.
long term, and that just means that you have to think about stakeholders that don't get any play otherwise, right? Like it just means you take a different view
Yeah,
of a company, and it's not
right.
anti-shareholder necessarily. Although
No,
you sometimes are a raging anti-shareholder
but it just
machine.
it just reflects. I just want it to reflect reality. I just want to do a better job of that. Like if you're in an industry like, I don't know, Boeing, where the life cycle of some of the projects that they're doing are like, could be like 10 years, then executives should be paid based on those terms, right? I mean, it shouldn't be year over year bonuses, blah blah blah. You know what I'm getting to. You know what I'm getting at.
I feel you.
But yeah, but oh, you killing us?
Well, it's been an hour 20.
Yeah, okay. No, you're right.
I think it's time to. That feels like a
We,
good place to
we said
wrap up.
enough. And if anyone was actually listening, I'd say once again, we did a good job covering ESG without any, I mean, purely altruistically at this point,
Are you
without
patting
any
yourself
product,
on the back?
no product to hawk. No, like boring, index or I don't know, bullshit research paper, which is just an intellectual discourse.
Yeah, too bad no one called in to partake in the discourse, jackasses.
We live and learn.
Well,
Live and
we'll
learn.
we'll keep doing the call-in tech should work. Unless I turn this off and we stop recording, and I find out 40 people tried to sign on and the tech didn't work.
Oh, that would be
I'll
nice.
find out later. That was Damian Rawls. I'm Matt Mascardi. We are Free Float Media. Thanks to our executive producers, Courtney Rowe and Courtney Cook. Thank you to our advisor, Dan Rogashnik. Thank you to the music provider in Todd Havanek. And thank you to our art department, which is John Walsh. These are all pro bono people. So go to Patreon and help us out. There will be links all over the place. I'm going to put them everywhere. $5, $7.50 a month. It's not a lot to ask for the best ESG, no bullshit, free range content you could find on the interwebs. So, Damien, we're going to come back next week and talk more COVID-19 and depress the universe. Are you up for that?
Oh boy. Yeah, sure.
Let's do it. I'll talk to you next week.
Have a safe, healthy weekend.
Stay
everybody.
healthy.